One thing I did relatively early on was to make a new styrofoam. The one that's the farthest to the right, I believe. And then not too long after that, I started work on this styrofoam. At around, if I remember correctly, 8 in the morning, I headed out to the tower in order to get some work in on my abstract painting, which is pretty closely based off of this. There were apparently... I spent this roughly 20 minutes of work time basically preparing my paint by mixing colors together to create the various hues of blue and orange that I would be using in order to paint into this outline that I traced the other day. My art professor was there, and she was working on evaluating some of the late ceramic shoes, which were either late because they were turned in late or due to the involved students getting a positive COVID pool test, I would imagine, and then having to go into quarantine. The emails I get regarding the pool test no longer straight up tell me whether I got a negative or positive test, but I would imagine if I got a negative, I imagine if I got a positive test, I would be approached by someone to tell me to quarantine, essentially. A considerable amount of late game progress was made on the Fellowship Adventures, which makes me more than hopeful that we'll be able to make it in time. I can help to finish it. I produced bread, and this time I can produce baskets of groceries, which is the 9-hour production period, or the second longest. Today, after that brief work on my art project, in the early morning, I went over and attended my African politics class through Collaborate Ultra. Though typically for that, you have to wait until it's either exactly 9:30 a.m. or right before it. I just went with exactly. Today's lecture by the professor had to do with the issue of gender and how it relates to Africa, and specifically African countries. Essentially, he talked about how gender inequality results from social constructs. To be exact, the traditional tendency for men to work in productive jobs and for women to work in reproductive jobs. He gave the example of hunting as a productive job, in that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor within that kind of job, and nursing as an example of a reproductive job, which, from my understanding of nursing, is a pretty important job, considering it's in the medical profession, and you need your workers to be in good health if you want them to produce for your society. But it doesn't produce goods, so to speak. What changed the traditional gender roles, for the most part, has been industrialization. Since that resulted in an equal rights being given to I found this on the floor near the exit to the Harrison Dining Hall when I got dinner with roughly... I got there with roughly 15 minutes to spare because I felt tired and decided to take a nap from roughly 5:10 p.m. to 7 p.m. I set an online alarm, but I must have slept through it because I woke up at 7:30-ish p.m. roughly 7:38 p.m. And I told myself, I can get there in time. I can get dressed and get there in time. Find a plastic bag. I had some difficulty finding my East Ridge mask and was about to put on one of my old Rockport masks when I just barely found it here within my computer bag like it is now, but at the time it was more well hidden. Yeah, by the time I got there, they didn't even have any soup. I ended up asking quite a few questions during this African politics class until I had roughly 15 minutes left before the next class, which was Spanish class. Which today was done through Zoom. Consisted of some VHL Central assignments that the teacher created on Tuesday. And you don't actually have to complete those those assignments. They were just assigned for practice during class. And I was put into breakout groups where we would work on these assignments together. Although we were each given these assignments individually. Essentially, it was free practice for the quiz on Thursday. Oddly enough, I still haven't submitted that second VoiceThread conversation. That VoiceThread regarding the second conversation. But I'll be able to do it after this. Early in the morning, I did some work on the 99th Dan Hamming, too. Though I don't believe I did as much as yesterday, since I ended up in the early morning hours kind of focusing on these styrofoam drawings. And I'll probably finish that one in the morning. I'm not entirely sure if barbecue sauce is good on cheesy bread. The barbecue sauce does taste good, though. I asked basically the first question I asked was, had to do with the relative prevalence of female genital mutilation within African countries, to which the professor said that it's part of culture, since it's a custom that's done culturally, and while those customs are being challenged, some communities are pushing against that because it's what their parents did and what their grandparents did, essentially. And because of that, they don't really see a reason for it to change. Industrialization produces a rationalization of culture, and under the definition that feminism is seeking equality between the two genders, which in of itself, gender is a social construct, then just about everyone is a feminist under that definition. Although it gets trickier when you consider exactly how to put equality between the genders into practice, because one person's idea of equality may be different from another person's idea of equality, and probably will be. You want to have a equality that makes sense, because whether a human is male or female, they're ultimately derived from nature, in that they are born into this world just like any other animal. And no legal law can override the natural rights that animals have, because animals live just fine without any legal bodies. Excuse me, and we just created legal bodies in order to live life to a higher standard than animals, essentially. I felt pretty tired by the time I got to Spanish class at around 11 p.m. We're waiting for lunchtime, which, because I had Spanish class, was essentially 12:15 p.m. And every now and then I would eat a small amount of raisins to kind of tide myself over. And then, oddly enough, when I got lunch, I came back with it around 12:45 p.m. It somehow caused this entire desk to end up being wet. And if I recall, I made a brief stop at the Nest. Either when I got lunch or when I got dinner. Though I'm leaning... It could be either or at this point. Although I'm leaning slightly towards when I got dinner. Even though realistically the Nest opens up at 11, and I think is open until 11 p.m. I consider art class to be a success because I was able to start painting. Generally for these circles, I painted them the shade of circle, the shade of orange, this one orange, this one light orange, and this one the light blue. And then I also painted that one the same way. And that's essentially all of the painting I completed during art class. And now at some point soon, I've got to apply the rest of the first coat of paint I applied. After my art class, the last thing I did before I took that nap was to order 3 cardboard cutouts for a $15 charge to one of my mom's credit cards so that they can, in a sense, attend my mini walk graduation ceremony, is what I believe it's called. Mom had initially sent me a picture of essentially just her head, so I had her send me new pictures right before I ordered the cutouts. I got the pictures of the cutouts for a relatively convoluted process. The pictures were messaged to me. I saved the pictures into VX Media. I found the VX Media folder as an album or gallery, as a gallery album. I saved the pictures to Google Drive. Then from Google Drive, I downloaded the pictures. And then I simply went onto the page for the cardboard cutouts, went to the order form, filled out a bit of digital paperwork, and upload the pictures within that paperwork. Although Dad sent me a picture of my sister that was essentially just her head, and then the picture of him also included my sister. And that was the better one he sent, because the other one included both me and my sister. So I just picked the one I felt was better. I'm really hoping we'll be able to make it in time. But now, there's a pretty good chance of that. It's looking like it'll be a pretty good reward. My previous carding library has been expired for a pretty long time. After getting dinner, I recall falling asleep again and waking up sometime at around 10:30 p.m. That sort of time. Also, oddly enough, during the art class, there were some newer brushes that I ended up using as well in order to try and be more precise with my painting. Excuse me. Since paint can be rather unwieldy at times, and those newer brushes just help me to stay within the lines I've outlined more. And although the tints of orange and blue that I made were definitely tints, they didn't seem to be that light. Especially the tint of blue I made. So I'm going to have to do a bit more thinking. And during those 3 classes I had today, I wrote very few, if any, notes. For the Spanish class, VHL Central assignments, I essentially refigured out how to conjugate verbs into the future and past subjunctive tense for a combination of looking through my old notes and basically help that the members of my various breakout groups gave. As for art class, roughly the first 20 to 30 minutes of it was us going over the writing assignment, which is going to be worth 20% of our final grade. And I strongly believe we'll be due our last class since it said it was due either on the 18th or 20th of May. Which in the grand scheme of things isn't that whole much time. I can confirm there's an extra credit assignment for my Spanish and art classes now, but not for my national security class, and I asked about an extra credit assignment for my African politics class, since I feel that, at least nowadays, it's important to bring that up with your college professors. Though I only did that for my African politics class because we only meet once a week, and it was a class in which it wasn't yet confirmed whether there would or wouldn't be extra credit assignment, though it could be implied there wouldn't be an extra credit assignment because it wasn't in the syllabus. But then again, I don't think it was in the syllabus either for Spanish or the art class, and there ended up being some extra credit anyway. I strongly believe at this point that I can get on the dean's list one last time. I'm just going to have to work hard at it. And my Spanish grade is currently roughly a 78, but it'll probably go up with the submission of that second VoiceThread response.